I'm about to tell you a ghost story with a difference, and the main difference is that this one is actually true. Now, because it's a true story, I do want you to listen to it. It's really important because these things do happen in the real world. But also, I've tried to write it, and I'm going to try and tell it to you in a way that shows you how to tell a good ghost story of your own, even if you've been lucky enough to not have experienced it for yourself. So when I tell you this story, I want you to listen out in particular for the amount of repeated language, vocabulary, and structures. So where that sort of repetition is involved in the story, especially when it's involved 3 times. I want you to also listen out for the descriptions that mention the passage of time passing by. And then finally, I want you to listen out for any reactions, any physical reactions that I have in me. Not just physical ones also, but emotional and mental ones as well. It's fine. So without further ado, let's turn out the lights so I can tell you my story.
It's not what you can see that should scare you. It's what you can't. When I was 18, not long after I passed my driving test, I used to drive to the nearest town where my friends lived. I'd always lived a few miles out of town, so I knew the route well. I'd been walking or cycling that route for years and got used to it, though I'd always sort of travelled it in the light. I'd been along that road plenty of times in the dark too, when my parents had been driving, or my friends' parents, or whatever. So I didn't think anything of it when I drove along there at night, though it probably would have been a different story if I were walking it on my own. The road cut through a wood, and the trees that line the road might sometimes give you an eerie feeling if you really thought about it, but either way, it was just one road. One long, straight road. Anyway, you get the idea. So one time I was returning home from a friend's house in my car. It was an old car, my first car, and I only paid just under £400 for it, so believe me, it was not a great car. We'd been watching a scary movie, so I was a little on edge. I started thinking about just how old my car was, and just how much I would hate for it to break down tonight of all nights. Remember, this was nearly 20 years ago. At that time, not everyone had a mobile phone. I was very much one of those people that did not have one. I didn't have the money for it, and I didn't really need one. So that was another good reason that it would not have been a good time for my very old car to stop working. You know, sometimes when you're thinking about something, especially something bad, but it happens just like that? Well, this was one of those times, because just as I was thinking about it, the lights on my car just went out. The engine stopped running, and my car basically shuddered and stuttered to a halt. I turned the keys frantically, but nothing happened. It was like the car had just completely turned to stone. And at that precise moment, I vowed to never watch a scary movie ever again. Pitch blackness all around me was suffocating. I started imagining movements in the darkness in front of me. I couldn't have seen anything, it was just too dark, but that didn't stop me imagining it. Just the wind moving the trees, maybe. But a shiver ran down my spine. I felt the blood rushing through my body, my heart pounding in my ribcage. I was breathing quickly, too quickly. I just needed to calm down. I took long, deep breaths. I closed my eyes. I told myself I was overreacting. I calmed myself down. I sat there for maybe a minute until I felt myself regain control. And then I opened my eyes. There was nothing there. I was sitting safely in my car. It just wasn't moving. I'd get out of the car, walk the mile or so to my house, call the breakdown recovery people in the morning. Nothing to worry about. All I had to do was follow the road, even though it was dark. It wasn't like I could even get lost. It was just one long straight road, and I'd already driven down most of it. Maybe I could hitch a lift with another car that passed by, even though people didn't often use this road. Well, actually, to be honest, the more I thought about it, the less I wanted anyone to pass by. Too creepy. Too scary. So I reached for the door handle. It was ice cold, and I mean ice cold. Just a minute or two ago, the heater had been running. It sent another shiver down my spine, but I took a deep breath and buried the fear. Just as I was about to open the handle, I heard it. Thud. Well, there was no way I was going to be opening the door now. Instead, I locked the door. You better believe I locked the door. I locked every single door I couldn't see a thing outside the windows. In fact, they started to steam up quite a bit from my panicked breathing. And as I was scrambling around in the back trying to lock the last door, that's when I saw it. A handprint. A handprint on the window, disturbing the steam. Well, I have to admit, I would never have imagined anything could be as terrifying as what I experienced then. I don't want to go into too much detail about the next few minutes because they just got more and more terrifying. Thud after thud after thud all around the car, on every window, impossibly quickly, like it was more than one pair of hands raining down on the car, hammering against the windows, slamming against the roof. The voice, that whispering, echoing, breathy voice, open the windows, open the windows. I'm not too proud to admit it. I cried, I screamed, I wailed. My hands shook and shook until eventually it stopped. It just stopped. I counted. 10 seconds, 20, 30 seconds. Still no more thuds. It didn't make me feel any better, not one little bit. I scrambled for the keys again, but there was no response from the engine. The lights still wouldn't come on. I was still stranded with whatever was out there. By now, a minute had passed since the last noise. And another 30 seconds went by. I began to think that maybe whoever or whatever that it was terrorizing me had finally left me alone. Another 30 seconds passed. I began to convince myself that I'd imagined it all. Nothing like this could possibly have happened. But then I looked at the windows again and saw the handprints that surrounded me. It had happened. Smash! From nowhere, the rear windscreen shattered. Shards of glass splintered the silence. It was too much for me to bear. I tried one last desperate time to start the car, and this time there was the faintest flickering of life from the engine. Again and again I turned the key in the ignition, praying the car would start, before those thuds began to rain down on it all over again. As my body started to convulse violently with the fear, the engine finally turned over. The lights came on again, and I saw all around me absolutely nothing. There was no one there. There was no possible explanation for what was happening to me. So I slammed my foot to the accelerator. The car lurched forward again down the road. Oh, my car practically flew down the road. When I got to my house, I ran from the car to the door, and I locked that door, and I ran upstairs, and I shut my door, and I got under the covers, and I didn't look out until the first shards of dawn light had cast themselves across my bedroom. It was only a few hours later that I realized what my terror had blinded me to the night before. Those handprints had been imprinted in the condensation on the windows. Car windows steam up on the inside. And when I went to look at my car, now missing a window, there was not a trace of the broken glass. It must have shattered from the inside. So, like I said, it's not what you can see that should scare you. It's what you can't. Well, looking back on it now, I realise I was never in any danger. That spirit or force or ghost or whatever you want to call it clearly didn't want to hurt me. It wanted to get out just as much as I wanted to get out of there. But you always fear what you don't understand.
Well, I hope you enjoyed my absolutely true ghost story. Now, just down there, you'll find a transcript of the story that I just told you. And the transcript is basically a word-by-word written version of something that you might have seen or heard. I've colour-coded that transcript into a few different sections to help you with some reading comprehension ones, some reading comprehension questions that you'll find underneath the text. So if a question is written in red, it's going to come from the red section of text to help you answer it, just because this is quite a long text to get your teeth into. I haven't given the questions a number of marks each this time. Just answer them to the best of your ability and to the amount of description and detail that you can. If you can explain something using evidence, then do. Now might be a good time to hit pause find the file from underneath and give the questions a go. And I'll see you in a minute. So you've had a go. Let's go through, first of all, the basic retrieval questions. Remember, these ones should be fairly straightforward, literal. Just find the key words, it will tell you the answer. However, I did set you one small trap in the first question. I'm hoping you didn't fall into it. So my first question was about how much I paid for my old car, and you might have been tempted to write down £400. If you were, take another closer look. Is it £400 or just under £400? The detail is important. Next question I think I asked you was about what I was doing on the evening of the story. Well, I'm sure most of you managed to pick this one out. I'd been at a friend's house watching a scary movie. And the final question, what was it that the strange voice whispered? Well, you might remember it from the story itself. The strange voice was whispering, "Open the windows, open the windows." Again, the perfect answer to that one would actually be written out twice. Open the windows, because that is exactly what the text said. So now we've done those retrieval questions, it's time to take a look at the more in-depth ones. So we're going to go to some screenshots to help us out.
So what's the purpose of the red section of text? Well, I think this red section of the text really sets the scene. It tells us about the road, which is going to be an important part of the story. It tells us about the car and how rubbish it is. Again, very important in setting up the situation. And it tells us a bit about me and my experience with the road without having a mobile phone, etc. So it sets up a bunch of important context that helps us understand the rest of the story. Why didn't he just call for help? Well, he didn't have a phone. We're really supposed to believe the car just stopped like that? Well, yeah, it was cheap and old and very rubbish. So it sets the scene, and importantly, it manages to answer some of the reader's questions that might affect their belief in the story before they even appear. So moving down to the next question about what my physical reactions show about my feelings when the car first stops. If I'd included a mark scheme with this activity, I think I'd have given this one 2 marks. One for the feelings, and the other for some quoting of the actual physical reactions that back it up. I think you'll have worked out that the feeling was fear or panic. The physical reactions weren't immediately given. You had to move a little further along the paragraph past my sort of internal ramblings. There you will find the shiver in my spine, the heart pounding in my chest, my rapid breathing. All of these reactions together suggest that I was scared or panicking somehow. Quite natural considering the circumstances. So how did I try to calm myself? Although it's not specifically stated, with a so or a because or some other connective like that, my calming techniques were sat between 2 statements about needing to keep calm. I just needed to keep calm. I just needed to calm down, I took long deep breaths, I closed my eyes, I told myself I was overreacting, I calmed myself down. Hopefully you found that. That would be a 1 mark question. Then we move down a little further to answer the final question in the purple section. What is the first sign something supernatural might be occurring? Well, so far we've just had a car breakdown. That's not supernatural. You might have been tempted to talk about the car suddenly stopping, but I don't think that's going to do the job. As we found out in the red section of the text, the car was old and rubbish, so it's not entirely unexpected. Instead, we need to move past all the statements of panic and physical reactions until something that can't really be explained turns up. And that happens right about here, where despite the heating having only just cut out, the door handles are now completely ice cold. Now moving on to the blue questions, what do you think is the most effective use of repetition in the blue section and why? Well, here we're going to need to take a look at the choices. As long as you identified some repetition, other than of keywords like you or the or an, you're going to have a chance of getting this one. There's so many to choose from. We had the repetition of locked here. Instead, I locked the door. You better believe I locked the door. I locked every single door. I was making absolutely sure it was locked. So I locked it and locked it and locked it. And I think this was pretty effective. Really drives home the whole point of my sort of scrambling panic. Because scrambling is absolutely what I was doing at that moment all those years ago. Elsewhere we have the handprint repetition. A handprint on the window. Obviously, underlining its importance as part of the story. And then we had third after third after third as well down here. All of those are sort of individual word level repetitions, but there are also some phrase and sentence structures that are getting repeated. There's a part here, raining down on the car, hammering against the window, slamming against the roof. That real repeated structure, 1, 2, 3 times. Lots of examples of threes again. Elsewhere, a little further down, 10 seconds, 20, 30 seconds. I cried, I screamed, I wailed. Even that thud after thud after thud we already mentioned, still in threes, all really effective. I honestly don't know which one works best. I'd be interested to hear back from you on that question in particular. Which part do you think is best, and why? What do we think? What do we notice about the length and structure of the sentences in this section compared to the others? Is the next question. Well, those threes and those short, sharp phrases really stand out in this section. Everything is brief and bare. There's no unnecessary descriptive phrases. Just this, 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 thud after thud after thud. That pattern over and over and over again. Just like the thuds raining down wouldn't stop, neither does this breathless pattern of narrative. And it's just absent in the other paragraphs, really. It happens here and there sporadically, but it's really saved for this part. I suppose probably the best contrasting section is the first one in red, where everything's built with a lot more descriptive detail. The part where I'm furnishing the reader with all the information they need to understand the really important part of my story. So now, the final blue question, why am I unable to convince myself that these events never happened? Well, this one's a bit more straightforward. The part where I'm trying to convince myself it never happened is down here. I began to convince myself I'd imagined it all. Nothing like this could possibly have happened. But then, I looked at the windows again and saw the handprints that surrounded me. Those handprints just won't let me forget it. It was real. The next question is about this paragraph here in the green section. Starting my car practically flew down the road. What's unusual about that sentence? Well, what's unusual about it is its length and its odd structure. Look how many ands we have here. It's another long breathless sentence. This time it's showing my hurry. You end up sort of hurrying through the sentence to get to the end of your breath in just the same way as I was hurrying through my house to hide under the blankets. I ran from the car to the door and I locked that door and I ran upstairs and I shut my door and I got under the covers and didn't look out until the first shrouds of dawnlight had cast themselves across my bedroom. It's just unrelenting, that sentence. So what was the twist in my ghost story? And what effect did it have on you when you understood it? Well, that second part's a personal reaction, but the first, the twist, because I'm assuming you didn't see it coming at the time, was that the hands weren't trying to get in my car, they were trying to escape. But when I've told my story to children and adults before, this has been the moment they most shudder. Even though the jeopardy, the danger of the story is gone, the realisation that I was actually so close to this strange, ghostly presence, actually physically trapped in the car with it, tends to be the moment that gets the most chilling reaction. Did it have the same effect on you? Well, the final question was all about it's not what you can see that should scare you, it's what you can't, and what you think that means. Well, this one's a general warning, isn't it? These things, these phantoms, ghosts, whatever you want to call them, exist. Just because you can't see them doesn't mean you shouldn't be scared of them. I still am, even now, nearly 20 years on.
Well, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed my story. I hope you had a good go at the activities. Maybe found some success. I'd love to hear about how you got on with it, whether you enjoyed the story, anything like that. Send it into the Year 6 email address, the usual one. And I look forward to hearing from what you got. Maybe giving you a shout out next week. Next time we're going to do a bit of creative writing, our own start of a ghost story. So look forward to that. Until next time, look after yourselves and remember, watch out for ghosts.